Hi, friends. Priscilla here, and today I'm going to be talking to you a little bit about where we're at when it comes to raising our kids bilingually. I have a 7-year-old son, a 5-year-old son, and a 2.5-year-old daughter. And my husband speaks Spanish. I speak Portuguese, and we speak obviously English in the home as well. And just a little bit of background, we have decided that we wanted to expose our kids to both Portuguese, Spanish, and English from the very beginning. Because my second language is Portuguese and they are home with me, they have been most exposed to Portuguese after English. So Spanish exposure would be their third language. And I just wanted to share a little bit about where we're at in terms of their ability to communicate, specifically in Portuguese, since that is my primary target language. And so, with all three of my children, I have been speaking to them in Portuguese since birth. I have tried to maintain that as a rule in our home, where when I speak to them, I speak to them in Portuguese. We are a homeschooling family, so I am also their teacher. And this has complicated things a little bit for us, but it has also been a rich opportunity when it comes to acquiring a second language. Since I have been speaking to my children in Portuguese since they were born, all three of them understand Portuguese very well. And they're able to understand when I speak to them, they're able to understand when they watch television, when I read a book to them, as well as when others speak to them in Portuguese. So their comprehension is very, very high. However, their ability to communicate themselves, their ability to speak, varies from child to child. Of my three children, the one who speaks to me the most in Portuguese most naturally is actually my 2.5, almost 3-year-old daughter. She is the one who's had the least exposure to English. She is primarily hearing Portuguese. And I would say that that is her primary language for sure. She is most comfortable and most fluent in Portuguese. And it's so amazing to me because of all of my children, she is the one with the sharpest communication skills for her age. It's pretty impressive, actually. And her vocabulary is very extensive. She does understand English quite a bit and Spanish as well. And she will try to communicate in English and Spanish whenever she is talking to someone in the family that she knows that their primary language is either English or Spanish, which is really really cute. But her primary language at this point is Portuguese. Now that was the case for my boys as well, my 7-year-old and my 5-year-old. Their primary language was Portuguese when they were 2 to 3 years old. Now, the more they are exposed to English, the more likely they are to um, want to speak English. My second most fluent child is my oldest son. I believe that one of the reasons why my 7-year-old communicates better than my 5-year-old at this point is because my 7-year-old is already sitting down for formal lessons in our homeschool. My 5-year-old, not so much. So my 7-year-old has been listening to and narrating a lot of literature, a lot of fairy tales, a lot of fables, and many different Bible stories that I read to him in Portuguese. And he does this as part of our homeschool lessons. So, because of those lessons in Portuguese, because of the narration that he's expected in Portuguese, his vocabulary is pretty extensive and his ability to communicate is more extensive than his younger brother. What I am finding with him is that he is very reluctant to speak to me in Portuguese during the rest of the day. So if I'm reading to him a story for homeschool where he is expected to narrate, he does that perfectly well. I read to him in Portuguese and he narrates to me in Portuguese. Now, when we are going about our daily lives and I'm speaking to him in Portuguese, so often he is trying to respond to me in English because that is just what is fastest for him. It's what comes most naturally because his English vocabulary is certainly much more extensive than his Portuguese vocabulary, and it's just easier for him. So we are definitely at that stage where I am trying to find different ways to encourage him to respond to me in our day to day life in Portuguese, and some days are better than others. Now, my 5 year old, it's a little tricky because I suspect that he actually knows Portuguese much more than I give him credit. And the reason why is because whenever he's around um, family members who do not speak English, I can hear him communicating with them in Portuguese, and I'm always impressed with how much he can say and how well he can communicate. So I suspect that once we start um, requiring narration from my 5 year old, he will be able to communicate in Portuguese a lot better than he is right now. He just needs more practice. And this is kind of where I'm at in a little bit of my struggle because I find that I've been very inconsistent with what I require of my 7 year old compared to what I require of my 5 year old when it comes to them responding to me in Portuguese during the day as we're just going about our lives. And I'm trying to be more consistent in asking my son, my 5 year old, whenever it is appropriate to translate or to attempt to speak to me in Portuguese so that he can get a little bit more practice. So that's just where we're at when it comes to our language acquisition, specifically the language of Portuguese. We have recently moved, and thankfully, we met a couple of homeschooling families learning Portuguese. And so we started twice a month at my place a Portuguese play group where we have 8 children between the three families. We get together and we read a story, we do some interactive activities, we have snacks, and we try to communicate as much as possible in Portuguese. The stories are always in Portuguese. We review vocabulary words and we learn some phrases and we sing songs, and we also try to practice just um, speaking to our children in Portuguese when we're together. And I think that that is going to really help us as my kids interact with other children who understand Portuguese. It really does help because it's causing my children to have more of a connection with the language, which I'm really, really excited about. So this is where we're at this point. Now, for this coming month, my focus is really going to be in reading to them in Portuguese as much as possible. This is where I would say I have been greatly challenged just because of homeschooling and the kinds of books that I want to expose them to, and just not having those books in Portuguese. So that's something that I'm really going to focus on for the next few weeks, just as much as I can, really working on exposing them to Portuguese through books. And the primary way that I'm going to be doing that is to use the resources that I have on hand. So we do have some books in Portuguese that are age appropriate for each of my children. And I'm going to just be a lot more intentional about reading those books to them, as well as using the Google Translate app in order to read other books that are actually in English, just reading, just having the pages translated as I read. Well, that's all that I have for today. I hope that you are encouraged in your own journey as you raise your children bilingual. Take care, and I'll see you in the next video. Bye bye.